Jack, you ready?
Morning, everyone. My name is Jack Barnes. I'm one of Pete Barnes' children. On behalf of the Barnes family, we would like to welcome everyone and thank everyone for coming to the bill signing today. When I was in high school, my dad took me to an exhibit up at the Minnie Beeville Community Center, not far from here. The exhibit was about the development of Edison, particularly North Edison. Among the displays were two maps, one from the 70s and another of the present, which was around 2010, 2012, 2011. The differences between the two were significant. I almost didn't recognize North Edison. One map showed a largely developed Edison, while the other visibly had a lot less residential and community and commercial growth. As a lifelong resident of the town, Dad witnessed all this change firsthand. Ponds he swam in or skated on, mostly gone. Woods where he would play with friends, now homes or apartment complexes. I think the significant and rapid development of Edison during his childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood spurred him to learn about and understand the importance of environmental protection and preservation. When Meg, Kenny, and I were growing up, Dad routinely took us to open spaces around Edison and Metuchen, including guiding tours around the Dismal Swamp and Triple C Ranch. He always hoped that by showing us the natural world at a young age, we would come to appreciate and share his love of open space and environmental protection. Well, Dad, it worked. Commissioner Charlie Tamaro, one of my dad's closest and oldest friends during his time in office, appropriately said a few months ago that Dad was the kind of person who didn't want recognition for his accomplishments. Unfortunately, with what the governor's about to do, and there's a sign, it might be a little too late to turn back. Edison looks the way it does today with a lot of open space because of Dad's efforts and the efforts of others like Bob Spiegel and Jane Tausman, Walt Stoschel, and Bob DeCash. And the Dismal Swamp, soon to be named the Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preserve, is the crown jewel of their accomplishments and determination. On behalf of the Barnes family, we would like to thank Commissioner Tamaro for originally proposing renaming the Dismal Swamp, all the officials in Edison, Metuchen, and South Plainfield who supported the idea, the legislative sponsors, Senator Deignan, and Senate President Steve Sweeney, Assemblyman Karabinchak, Assemblyman Sturley Stanley, and Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin. And of course, thank the governor for coming to Edison today to sign the bill. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Governor Phil Murphy.
How about those remarks? Let's hear it again for Jack. That was so special. Really well done, Jack. So honored to be with you all today. Thank you for your service to our nation. Hello, everybody. I put on 100 SPF suntan lotion. So for the Irish among us, I just want to make sure you know that. Jack, really impressive. God bless you, pal, and God bless your dad, and thank you for continuing your dad's legacy of public service. Honored today to be with a whole host of Team Barnes. Your mom, Katie, to your right, siblings Ken and Meg, your grandmother, Barbara, and your brother-in-law, Adam. And to each and every one, let's hear it for the Barnes family. I, too, want to thank Senate President Steve Sweeney and Speaker Craig Coughlin for quickly passing this legislation. I know they wanted to be here today, so in absentia, I give them a shout-out. I want to recognize a few other folks, all dear friends. My congressman, the chairman, Frank Pallone, is in the House. Frank, God bless you. Senator Pat Deignan is with us. Assemblyman, you don't get into Middlesex County unless you can pronounce the word Karabinchak. Rob Karabinchak. His colleague, Assemblyman Sturley Stanley, is with us. Middlesex County Commissioner Director Ron Rios is in the house. Ronnie, great to see you. Bob Deal, Council President. Bob, nice to see you. Good to have you, man. I don't see, is Tom Lanky with us? I'm not sure Tom's here. I know mayoral candidate Sam Joshi is here. Sam, good to see you. Artie Cifelli, members of council, including my friend Joe Coyle, who had 100 SPF on with me on Sunday at the India Day Parade. Executive Director of the aforementioned Bob Spiegel and his colleagues. Dorothy Rasmussen, who I've lost in here, chairwoman, and sitting right beside Bob. And to everybody here who have come to honor the late Judge Peter Barnes III and his work preserving this space. In just a few minutes, I will have the great honor of signing a bill to rename this space, as Jack alluded to, the Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preserve, which I think we can all agree has a far better ring. To talk about an upgrade in the name of something, a far better ring to it than Dismal Swamp. I'm Miss Sean LaTourette, the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection. Sean, great to see you. But first, I want to take just a couple of minutes to reflect on the remarkable and dedicated career of the man without whom this place may not exist. Pete's record of public service spanned more than 2 decades. Service coursed through his veins literally from birth, and he followed in the tremendous footsteps and example of his late dad and namesake, Peter Jr. Serving his community wasn't for Pete just a deeply held value. It was part of his identity. Everywhere he served, from local government, the Edison Township Council and Housing Authority, to the State Assembly and Senate and the New Jersey Superior Court, at every step of the way, Pete worked to make the lives of others safer, healthier, and better. And he did. In fact, the existence of this protected land is a perfect example of the legacy Pete has left behind. There was a little bit of irony that Pete poured so much of himself into the preservation of a place known as Dismal Swamp, because anyone who knew Pete knew how life to him was anything but dismal. He saw beauty in everything. He found joy and purpose in everything he did. These wetlands are a place of wonder and beauty, a home to hundreds of species of animals, and a place where people come to reflect, find purpose, and yes, have some fun. This place is not dismal, not in the least, and neither was Pete. And now the two, the man and the place, will be remembered together as they should be. Where's Ed Potasnik? I missed Ed. Was here. Ed's the first guy who raised this place with me, Ed, about 7 years ago. I want to give you and all the other advocates a shout out. So thanks to each and every one of you. With that, I'd like to invite my dear friend, my congressman, the chairman, Congressman Frank Pallone.
Thank you, Governor, and thank all the legislators, Pat and Rob and Sterling are all here, who were, as well as the county commissioners that were so much involved in renaming this for Peter Barnes. But I have to say, when I see his son, when I see Jack here, it's like Peter's here, or even like his grandfather's here, because they look so much and act so much alike. So I think it's very special to have an opportunity not only to be here and name this great place for Peter, but also to see his family and reminisce about all that Peter did and also what his father did. I just want to stress as a federal official that I know how tough it is to preserve wildlife. You know, when you talk about, the governor talked about Bob or Jane or others over the years that made it possible to preserve Dismal Swamp. It was a very hard-fought battle. Peter knows that, and all of you know that, as Edison went through the throes of development, there were definitely those who wanted to build and wanted to, build housing or apartments in the area of Dismal Swamp. And the residents and the representatives and various environmental groups got together and insisted that that was not the case, that there had to be in Edison a wildlife reserve like this one. But I also want to stress at the federal level that you have to continue to remain vigilant, right? So when the governor talks about wetlands, and I know it sounds political, but there were efforts in the last few years, particularly under the Trump administration, to really break down a lot of the environmental protection. Wetlands come under the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act, and they were protected from pollution, so you couldn't dump and do different things that would pollute the wetlands. And under the Trump administration, they tried to change that rule, Waters of the United States rule, if you will, that would have allowed it to be developed or to be polluted and not protected in a major way. And just recently, the Biden administration issued new rulemaking to overturn that, or I should say to make sure that Trump rule did not become final. And so it is an ongoing effort. And so, you know, Peter's legacy is not only to make sure that this was preserved, but also to make sure that it continues to be preserved and protected, because otherwise, who knows, right? So we're all here collectively to make sure that Peter's legacy continues, not only with the naming, but also to make sure that we continue to have this wonderful area. When I came today, it's the last thing I say, I looked down here, and it's like you can't even see the horizon almost. It's just such beautiful, like a postcard to look down that path. And that's just a very special thing for all of us. So let me just commend everyone, and particularly Peter today, for all that you've done to make sure this happens. Thank you.
Frank, thank you. Frank makes a very important point on things like conservation and preservation and the environment as a general matter. We saw this frightening UN report that has just come out. There's never a day where you can tie a bow around it and say we got the job done. It's always a fight. It's always on our hands, and it always will be. But there are days where you can celebrate and say, you know what, we made a huge step in the right direction, and this is one of those days. Thank you, Frank. Nobody knew this guy better in terms of his professional and personal capacities than the next speaker. We wouldn't be here today without him. Please help me welcome Senator Pat Duignan. I, by the way, wore no socks today, Your Honor.
The governor's comments brought to my attention every person I spoke to when we were talking about this dedication, including Senate President Steve Sweeney, says to me, Pat, the Dismal Swamp? And I was sitting here thinking, you know, it's really absolutely captures what Pete Barnes was all about, to take something whose name was Dismal and make it into Pete Barnes. Because whether Pete was in the Assembly, whether he was on the Council, whether he was in the Senate, or whether he was a Superior Court judge, he always looked at the positive. When you would leave Pete, you would be smiling about something. He'd be talking about pizza, or he'd be talking about his family, or he had knowledge of sports like nobody I ever knew in my life. He looked at the positive way of life. And I'm one of the most, and I'm looking at Barbara, probably one of the most meaningful, important things in my life when I ran for Assembly. Literally the next day, Pete Barnes Jr., who we always call Pete Barnes Sr., called me up and said, Patty, he always called me Patty, and if my mom knew that, she would have killed him. Patty, come on over for breakfast. And Pete learned from his parents. And you young, you know, when they say that you're a reincarnation of your dad, you're a reincarnation of what your mom and dad have taught you. And this is an example for everybody, all of us, especially in these crazy times that we're in right now. If you do the right thing, people will acknowledge it. And Pete Barnes is an absolute embodiment of that. And we should be celebrating him here today. And thank you, Governor, for doing this. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. This just in.
I'm going to get in trouble. Charlie Tamara, who really was the one whose idea this was, asked me to read a short statement for him. And as we said, Charlie and Pete, I mean, like brothers. It was really Charlie's idea. So let me make this as quick as I can. If my friend Pete Barnes were here today, he would be quite embarrassed. Peter J. Barnes III was a humble man who truly believed in public service. Pete never sought accolades or any sort of recognition for everything he accomplished to make Edison Township, to make communities in the 18th Legislative District and across New Jersey a better place for people and families. And Pete did plenty. Pete believed it was his duty as an elected official to do the best possible job for other people. To paraphrase Governor Phil Murphy, Peter J. Barnes III distinguished himself as a lawmaker who put good public policy before any personal desire to grab quick headlines. Pete was a workhorse, not a show horse. That is absolutely true. During Pete's 11 years on the Edison Township, during his years of service in the New Jersey Senate and Assembly, and as a Superior Court judge, Pete always worked hard to make everyone's life a little better. It was not always easy or popular, but Pete always rose to meet those challenges. One of Pete's most significant contributions was to make our environment cleaner, healthier, and to make our communities greener. As a councilman, Pete Barnes went door to door to convince voters that Edison needed a modest open space tax. To reduce housing density, Pete fought for 1-acre zoning. He helped preserve Metuchen and Plainfield golf courses. In the state legislature, Pete helped to create a commission to ensure the 600-plus acres in Dismal Swamp will be forever protected. This is Pete's legacy to the people of Edison, Metuchen, South Plainfield, and Central Jersey, so they may enjoy and appreciate its wetlands, hardwood forests, and wildlife. So it is absolutely appropriate that we rename Dismal Swamp as the Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preserve and change the name of this special commission that was created to honor Pete's memory. I want to thank Governor Murphy for signing the bill today, making this a reality. I also wish to thank Senate President Sweeney, Assembly Speaker Coughlin, yours truly, Rob Garabinchak, Assembly Stanley, who sponsored the bill, and most importantly, our governor who signed it, Charlie Tamaro.
I love that, man. Thank you. Really well done. Charlie is a great guy, and in absentia, we give him a shout out. Thank you for reading that, Pat, and thank you for your personal reflections as well. So you heard Rob Karabinchak and Sterling Stanley, our sponsors in the Assembly, and would love to welcome up Rob Karabinchak to speak on their behalf. Rob? Good to see you, buddy.
Well, I'll first start off with Speaker Coughlin apologies that he can't be here today, so I'm just going to read a couple of remarks that he wanted me to bring forward. First, in dedicating the preserve to Peter is a way of honoring his instrumental role in safeguarding the spectacular, diverse area, until today, we knew as Dismal Swamp. One of our state's last remaining wetlands ecosystem, Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preserve, as it will be known, will stand in New Jersey's ongoing commitment to nature preservation. Though I cannot be here today, this moment of celebration is reserved for Peter. Serving beside him during our time in the legislature, it was clear what a fierce champion he was. And he leaves behind a legacy of tireless environmental advocacy and work to protect our natural habitats that must live on in all of us. I extend my thank you to Governor Murphy for signing this legislation today, the Middlesex County delegation for their commitment to seeing this through, and my future visits to the preserve will be accompanied by my fond memories of Peter. That's what Speaker Coughlin's statements are. For myself, Peter and I go back a long, long way. I met Peter when we went to high school together over 50 years ago. We've been friends ever since that first day we met in J.P. Stevens. During that time, we've had so many memories together through high school, out of high school, through government, through everything that we've done together. And one of his big things was the pizza down at Ferraro's on Amboy Avenue. One of the most important things to Peter was friendship and family. That was his core trait. His dedication to helping people was unsurmountable. Anywhere anybody came to him and asked for help, he was there, without a hesitant. Didn't make a difference, your color, your financial system, your anything. He was always there for every single person. With the renaming of this preserve, for me personally, this is an honor to even be here speaking for Peter. I miss him every day. He was truly a good friend. So with that being said, I am absolutely honored to be here again and waiting to take this and change it and see that our great governor sign this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Well said, Rob, by both you and the speaker. Thank you so much for your leadership on this, and Sterling as well, alongside you in the Assembly. 50 years, man. That's a friendship. Last but not least, it takes a village, as we always say, and it takes all levels of government. And the Middlesex County leadership has been exceptional on this matter, as they are on every other matter. That's because they've got great leadership, and it's led by the Director of the Commissioners in Middlesex County, Ron Rios.
Thank you, Governor Murphy. Good morning, and it's wonderful to be here with you all today for this historic occasion. Thank you to Governor Murphy for sharing this moment with all of us here in Middlesex County. Pete Barnes, as you will hear from anyone who had the luck of knowing him, dedicated his life and his career to helping others, always caring about the well-being of his fellow neighbors. Pete exemplified the best of Middlesex County, born and raised right here in Edison, growing up with our county commissioner, as you've heard, Charlie Tamaro. Peter never forgot his roots and used his career as a public servant to give back and to better the community that he called home. His impact was far-reaching and touched many in a variety of ways, but his legacy will live forever. Living in the lands he championed to protect the Dismal Swamp, recognizing the importance of saving the largest natural area remaining in northern Middlesex County. Pete fought hard for this land's protection, sponsoring the bill to create the Dismal Swamp Preservation Commission, often going door to door, as you've heard, to get the word out. With over 660 acres of land protected, the now named Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preserve is home to 175 species of birds, 24 species of mammals, amphibians, and reptiles, as well as a dozen threatened and endangered species. Pete was truly a protector of all that call Middlesex County home, with his impact reaching far beyond his human counterparts. I had the pleasure of knowing Peter Barnes and working with him, and he truly was a class man. As Senator Digan said, it was about family, helping others. Again, thank you for being here today and for inviting me to share a few words about Pete's legacy in the county and the importance of dedicating this land to his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for your leadership and for your great remarks. So, Barbara, Katie, family, I'm both incredibly honored to sign this bill right now, and I'm incredibly relieved to have had an event in New Jersey where the words mask or masking did not get uttered by anyone. Let's sign this thing. I think my colleague Matt Stanishi will deliver the pens to you. If that's okay. You want to come up? Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the whole family and anybody else who's. Assembly Bill 5822, and the names of the sponsors, the names that have been uttered today: Rob Karavinchek, Shirley Stanley, Craig Coughlin in the Assembly, Pat Dignan, and Steve Sweeney. In the Senate, and the synopsis is it renames Dismal Swamp and the Dismal Swamp Preservation Commission as the Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preserve and the Peter J. Barnes III Wildlife Preservation Commission. Talk about an uptick. Okay. I will give everybody the money shot, even though I can't see a thing. I'll take my glasses off and pretend like I. Okay. First up, Katie, where are you? Right behind you. God bless you and congratulations. Mom, Barbara Barnes. Barbara? Jack representing your siblings. God bless you and God bless your dad. Laurie. You can see we're going to spread this out over a lot of pins here. Congressman Frank Malone. Where are you, Frank? Senator Pat Guyton. Picking up steam here. Assemblyman Rob Karabinchak. How are you, Rob? Commissioner Director Ron Rios. Ron. Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Sean LaTourette. Come on down. And Assemblyman Sterling Stanley. So, I get to do something here. First of all, stand up. There's two more things to do here, and this is one of them. Barbara, Katie, family, to everybody else. This is now the law of the land.